Welcome to Clean Air Action's podcast, Cleaning Up Dirty. We talk politics with non-toxic people. I'm Liz Green Schultz. I run a political nonprofit called Clean Air Action.
And I'm Sean Hoffman, Legislative Director of Clean Air Action. Clean Air Action is the proud sister organization of the Clean Air Council, the oldest environmental and public health organization in Pennsylvania.
Together, we fight for your constitutional right to breathe healthy air. Over here at Clean Air Action, we fight dirty with clean. That applies to anyone who messes with our political and civil rights, including corporations and politicians. We're coming into part 2 of our episode with Heather McTeer Toney, Executive Director of Beyond Petrochemicals. We taped an awesome episode with her that we were so excited about we ran super long and decided to split it into a second episode. So here's part 2. A part of your book talks about heat islands, and I'm sure many people have not thought about the connection between the environmental movement and violence in cities. But this intersection with environmental work, you talk about rising temperatures, heat islands, violence. So tell us a little bit about that, and what does the country need to do to begin to properly address these issues?
I was in the middle of a fellowship at the University of Chicago, actually testing out a couple of these chapters before the book came out. And on the day that I was teaching the session of how the murders of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery are connected to the climate crisis was the day that the George Floyd decision was being handed down. And my dear friend and colleague, Mustafa Santiago Ali, was my guest. And it was right at 4 p.m. that we were on, and the tension, even though we were all on video, was like, we could feel it because we didn't know what was going to happen. And we were having a very live, in-the-moment conversation about how increased heat and disparities of heat within urban communities was a influencer to violence in those communities. And that violence included police violence that we were experiencing as a country right then. And the awareness of this across the entire country is so important to not only how we respond, but how we plan. Because when George Floyd was murdered, the temperature on the concrete, the temperature on the asphalt was 10 degrees hotter than it was in the neighboring community where there was green space, where there were plants, trees, grass. And so just that one small element of understanding how an impervious surface, something that is not heat reflective, but it causes an increase in the heat, can also have a traumatic impact on human behavior is very important for us to understand in how we plan. Because that fact also translates to domestic violence and abuse within communities, child abuse within communities, learning disparities within communities. Just the simple fact that you have urban populations that when they are in a place that is hotter, and we are having increased temperatures, means that they are more likely to encounter some type of violence, means that it's something we should pay attention to. And what is even more striking to me is that this is not just something studied within the United States. It's something that we can reflect upon globally as we are seeing global temperature rise and determine what is the human behavior that we can take that begins to reduce it. Because as we plan better together for green spaces within urban populations, we can also plan better to reduce the amount of pollution that's going into the atmosphere that's making it hotter in the first place. Right, yeah. You know, it's what I love about the work that I do now, because now I'm serving as the executive director of Beyond Petrochemicals, and we're looking at how do we stop the expansion of these unnecessary petrochemical facilities throughout our country. And part of what that problem is it goes into the emissions that end up in our atmosphere and our climate that make it hotter. So getting to the underlying problems help us solve social problems that we see, and we see the travesties of those problems that continue to reverberate throughout communities across this country.
And I'm seeing in that you mentioned the wisdom across communities that we can share, that this wisdom actually already exists. And I didn't know that before I became a Philadelphian. And there's fairly consistent gun violence in my area. So I started to learn as it gets warmer what time I needed to be home by in order to be sure to avoid that. And there's actually a term for Philadelphia in the summer that I'm not going to use just because as a white woman, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to. And
we'll be safe and we won't use that.
Yeah, we'll just lean conservative in that area. The only area I might lean conservative.
That's one of the things I wrote in the book was when I was in office, my police chief would say, okay, it's about to get hot. People are going to get a little foolish. And I didn't make the connections other than what I had always known is that when you get hot, you get agitated. It's some basic common sense. It's a thing, right? I'm at that stage in my life. I get hot all the time. And then I'm like, okay, my nerves. But there are certain factors that people have understood. This is what happens. This is what happens to human behavior. And we need to plan for that to happen. It's not a fluke.
Right.
But if it gets warmer, then this is what needs to occur. Because this is what's going to happen to your body physically. This is what happens to your mentality. This is what happens to you in terms of the space that you exist and coming in contact with other people. And these are things that we can not only prepare, but we can stop altogether if we pay attention to what's happening and what we're doing within our climate.
And really have responsive government.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we see that in Philadelphia on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. Everything you just described, Heather, you can go into those neighborhoods and the hottest parts of town have very limited, if any, green space or tree cover. And that's decades.
Hunting Park.
Yeah, that's absolutely one. I remember learning about that again as an undergrad, people measuring the level of essentially strife in these parts of town that for years, that was a response to crime way back in the old days. Oh, you got to take away all the bushes and trees and stuff. And that all turns out that just made it worse, made it hotter and made it, increase all these problems.
Well, we also have to take into account, though, the policy that was in place that was very discriminatory, that helped to create some of these areas, and the role that it has played in creating environmentally unfriendly places. Yes. Redlining was a real thing in the United States of America. We still
has a different form, but
we're still dealing with this policy that separated people in neighborhoods, but also directed where facilities like landfills and chemical plants would be located because they were kept out of the places where you had good housing, where you did have green spaces. And so how communities have been planned, in part as a result of policy and financing, have had an impact on the environmental conditions of those communities. As we're in the process, I think now, of cities, local governments, states, and our nation addressing the climate crisis, we have to also address the policies that were put in place to make sure they don't continue to exist and further harm communities, but instead are creating solutions that align us better and help protect our entire country in a better way.
For transparency purposes, it's worth naming that the org you run is one of the funders of the org that I run. And so we're only a little bit terrified to have you on the podcast right now. In fact, we may or may not have a current funding proposal before you. So, why not just record our first ever conversation and post it on the internet? Nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely nothing wrong with that at all.
I hope we haven't made complete fools of ourselves and killed our chances at getting refunded. But can you tell us a bit about your work with Beyond Petrochemicals?
it's any consolation, I do not make these decisions in and of by myself. So I don't think you have anything to worry about there.
Solid answer.
That might be good news or bad news to some, but I think the work that we're doing right now, it is ambitious, it is necessary, and it is just crazy enough for people who have a lot of hope to be involved in. When Mike Bloomberg decided that he was going to invest into stopping the expansion of petrochemical facilities, it was really like seeing around a corner of where the money's going to go. And they're really good at being able to follow the data and follow the money. The oil and gas industry, the fossil fuel industry, they too are coming to the realization that we have to move into more renewable and sustainable energy sources, still are trying to figure out where that bottom line is going to come from.
Oh, yeah.
And petrochemicals, per data, emissions, and following the money was that next space. And so it was just really phenomenal for Bloomberg to be able to not only see that, but to say, we're going to invest in that because it's about saving people's lives. Because that's what it comes down to. There are over 120 proposed petrochemical facilities in this country.
Wow.
But the crux of them fall into communities that are already overburdened by pollution.
Tale as old as time.
And
not in my backyard.
right?
You putting that petrochemical plant in my backyard.
And yeah, here we are.
Yeah, here we
in
are.
places that are already overburdened with pollution, with air pollution, and dealing in some respects with organizations and companies that have not ever been good on making sure they are following enforcement rules. So the idea that we need to create more petrochemicals, and for the purpose of listeners who don't know, they're like, what in the world are y'all talking about?
I was just about to
What is
ask
a
you, Heather.
petrochemical?
I was just about to ask.
Why are we spending so much time talking about this? What is it? Spell it. PR chemical. Like that's what most people would think about, right?
They could check out our website, cleanairactionfund.org, and get a whole explainer about that. But in the event that they're driving.
In the event that they're driving, they come back to, because they bookmarked this as their favorite podcast, and they're going to come back and listen to it and go follow it.
Obviously.
It's just chemicals made out of fossil fuels. Guess what plastic is made of? It's the chemicals you use to make plastic.
Comes from oil.
It comes from oil, and that's it. So oil is the byproduct. Or like our friends over at Hip Hop Caucus like to say, it's the side hustle of oil and gas that is now trying to become the main hustle of oil and gas.
What a good way to describe it. That is exactly what's happening.
Yes, it is.
And it makes me think not only of Pennsylvania, but of Cancer Alley. We have a lot of partners we fight alongside throughout Louisiana, Texas, Ohio, West Virginia, and our very, very fabulous comms person and campaign consultant, Hillary Flint, pointed out that we should plug the website spilltracker.org, which says that the U.S. averages one petrochemical incident every 4 days. And if people don't understand the impact of petrochemical incidents, they should check out stillhere.org, which amplifies the stories of the people whose lives were absolutely devastated by the East Palestine train derailment last year. The annual cost of petrochemical incidents is nearly $500 million. And we know the corporations who have caused these disasters do not always foot the bill for them. 39% of Americans live within 3 miles of a hazardous facility. And this is exactly what we're trying to raise awareness about and change.
And to put a finer point on, for folks wondering, oh, well, what does a petrochemical spill or incident really look like? We look at the East Palestine derailment, and the trains in that incident were carrying the main real nasty one is vinyl chloride, which was being transported. That derailed and caused, talk about an environmental justice, public health disaster. Vinyl chloride is a petrochemical. And there are absolutely safer alternatives to that on the market today that we could implement. But because of corporate greed and a lack of political will, vinyl chloride is still a thing riding the rails at this very moment that could once again cause a similar disaster in any number of other communities across America.
Yeah, it's one of those spaces where this is the get stuff done degree comes into place, because it's a moment in time when every single person can take an action to help get it done. EPA is considering now, how do we ban vinyl chloride? And it's a moment that the engagement is so important because of being able to have the data from Spill Tracker. We launched Spill Tracker on the anniversary of the East Palestine Railroad derailment. And it was to raise awareness around the fact that not only had this incident occurred, but there are a lot of these incidents that are occurring around the country. And just because you don't see it maybe on your local news doesn't mean it's not happening somewhere. So in a way to encourage people to talk, share, but also to take an action, tell EPA, yes, we need to ban vinyl chloride and we need to recognize the dangers that they propose to our communities. But as you said, there's something different out there that we can use, that there are these alternatives, and being able to really dig in on making the alternatives available and affordable, that's where we have to go.
On our website, stillhere.org, we have an action alert where people can tell the EPA to ban vinyl chloride, to call for health care for the residents who are currently experiencing health disasters because of this derailment. And while we're begging for reform and begging for basic services for the people whose lives were devastated by this, Norfolk Southern, the corporation, is not only still running trains, but just had another derailment about 60 miles from here, wherein 3 trains collided and it barely made the news. And one of the trains derailed into the Lehigh River, which feeds straight down to the Philadelphia water supply. And people really barely heard about this.
We have to acknowledge that not only are these things occurring in our communities, but sharing it. It's the thing I love about social media now is if you have a cell phone in your hand, you have a television camera to the rest of the world, potentially. And after East Palestine, we saw so many people in the community sharing what their real lived experience was. It really helped to urge where we see EPA today. But you know what really made me smile about even the anniversary of East Palestine? It was, yes, that we were getting a lot of attention to this, but on the anniversary, there were people from Louisiana and from Texas who flew or drove or made their way to East Palestine, Ohio, to stand in solidarity with that community, to say, it's happened to us too. We're here with you. We're not going anywhere, and we're going to fight this together. That to me brings us back to this space of, this is not a singular fight. This is not, one region versus another region. This is not East versus West. It's not, SEC versus Pac-10. It's not, it's not that.
Big Ten, okay? Big Ten. I went to Rutgers.
See? Big Ten. Clearly, I live in Mississippi because nothing exists outside the SEC. But it's that alignment of understanding we're going to be with each other in this moment, regardless of whether we've been together in the past. We're going to be together because this is a health impact. It is a environmental impact. It's an economic impact to our communities, and we must act as one moving forward. Just imagine we are now able to marry that community cross-geographical collaboration with data and research and science that we're bringing from beyond petrochemicals, with amazing communications that you all are doing here through the podcast and through all the channels. Keep going. Like all of these things, I think, are forcing the industry to take notes and forcing action that is long overdue.
Folks listening can't see, of course, but I'm over here like a bobblehead just nodding along to what Heather is saying, because I totally agree that we've seen a lot of barricades, blockages to getting positive reform in the wake of this East Palestine tragedy You take the National Railway Safety Act, a bipartisan bill in Congress that is just stalled out. President Biden's waiting to sign it. And I think the way to break through that, to break through the corporate lobbyists making their calls and shutting this down, is for people to come together in a big way and say, this is unacceptable. We've got common sense, bipartisan reform that you sir, I bet you.
And it's not even controversial.
The only folks who think it's controversial are the railway companies.
And it's worth mentioning that Norfolk Southern's CEO lied very clearly. It's not even controversial for me to say that because it's on video on our website. You can go check it out. And he got a raise last year, and he's still the CEO. It's an interesting intersection of some of the forces that inspired this podcast. I totally agree that one of the cool parts about the East Palestine anniversary is seeing the people coming together and the resilience of the people who went through that crisis together. And a lot of them probably don't vote for the same people that I might, but the way they tell their story, you can't help but listen, and it really does bring people together.
I think that collaboration is what will lead us into identifying solutions, identifying clear targets that we're all aligned that must be stopped. You know, we don't want to see another huge infrastructure footprint that we are experiencing right now in Louisiana's Cancer Alley. In Pennsylvania, you've got in Beaver County a huge facility that is there that, you know, has already had to pay a fine because it has not met enforcement standards. And just the duplication of these emitting industries that are killing people is something that I think we're all aligned. We don't want more of that. The question becomes is how do we now raise the awareness and ensure that constituents can see the connection between their experience here in Pennsylvania to West Virginia to Texas to Louisiana, and that we are making note of the need to stop these specific targets, the need to see where the infrastructure is planned to go, and to be able to say a hard no, a hard stop. We don't want more of that here.
Can I ask you a little bit of a personal question? If you want to queue up some snacks.
Let me get a sip of water because I'm looking in your eyes like, oh, this is going to be a good one.
I don't know what it is, folks, but I'm taking a Kit Kat.
Because as you're talking, I'm thinking about what messaging would bring people together and help to get them to see this. And I have a little bit of a controversial messaging idea I'm flirting with that I would love to get your thoughts on.
I'm so listening.
It's God, which is going to be an interesting thing if some of my loved ones are listening to this to hear that I now believe in God. Sorry.
Amen.
Sorry if anybody's freaking out. Sorry, not sorry. It's been an interesting journey for me in justice work because never in a million years did I expect that I would go from being a devout nihilist, as I would say, about 2 years ago, believing that there is nothing other than what we do while we're here, to now really believing to the core of my being in a greater power. And this is actually the first time that I'm announcing this anywhere,
Amen.
But I'm moved by the spirit of the room. And God is something that I think about as a really unifying force, crossing party lines, crossing states, where you live, which part of the city you live in, what your class is, race, religion, gender. So should we be talking about God and the environmental movement?
Yes. Now I'm going to follow that yes up, and hopefully I won't have a whole sermon here.
Please.
Do it.
But
Do
if
it.
we do,
Take us to
you know,
church.
I've always been a person of faith. I was raised as a person of faith, and I was raised in the South. So I come from a family that I discovered much later in my life was a family of ministers. But I cannot separate my faith in God with the solution of the climate crisis, because it is such a crisis that only the faith of God can provide the hope that people need to know that there is a solution that exists. And that is what in my opinion, is missing in this moment. It is this understanding that hope exists. It exists for all of us. And sometimes there are problems that are just so big that you say only God can solve. That's what I hear from my part of the world, is that sometimes you have problems that you can't handle because there is nothing within our humanity and that we can do in this one little body that can come up with the idea to solve such an existential crisis. But if we come together with our collective energy, our collective faith, our collective ideas, our collective ingenuity, we have the ability, and it's through that energy that I think it's a oneness of God. It's a oneness of our faith to be able to say, no, there is a solution, and we believe in what that solution is, even though we can't see it, touch it, smell it, taste it, hear it. But we believe that it exists and that we can come together and create this. There's been such a division between science and faith that now is the moment to weave those back together.
Yes, exactly.
That I can believe and have faith and believe in science at the same time.
It was my physics professor at Rutgers, I think his name was Mark, I don't know, who said that physicists are some of the most devout people because they know the science and they know that we don't have an explanation for some of it.
And if we can get to a place where we're not afraid to say that in a pulpit or a synagogue, we're making progress.
We're a physics classroom.
There we go, in all of these places. But there has been such a fear in trying to connect those two that it has taken us away from this moment of faith. It's really important to us right now. No one group has the copyright, has the permission that just says, this is ours. And it is incumbent upon all of us to use all of our gifts to be able to really push in the way that I think is necessary. And it's so funny we're having this conversation because just this morning I was having this conversation because of a scripture that I was meditating on. And
what was it?
Yeah, right? Okay. Because just sort of dealing with laws
I'm
and
getting
policies.
eyes over there. Please don't ask her.
Like all of this, we're having so many conversations about like, how do you meet and how do you just talk to people on a intimate moral level with where they resonate and what they feel. And the place that I'm from, people feel their faith. You know, you go to church on Sunday and you might have had a horrible week, but come Sunday morning, right? You feel your faith and you feel that there is hope.
Whereas I grew up Lutheran.
Oh, bless it.
So that was not a thing in my church. No, I felt dead inside. And that was, so literally this morning, I called a friend who's in seminary school and was talking through some of this, and she prayed with me on the phone. And she said, and one of the things she said is like, and Lord God, please help bring the Spirit to people who are driving people away from the faith.
I like to study scripture. I don't just read. I really like to study. So the scripture that I read and sat with me is actually in Isaiah chapter 10, and it's verses 1, 2, and 3. And it says, "Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, to deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people, making widows their prey and robbing the fatherless. What will you do on the day of reckoning when disaster comes from afar? To whom will you run for help? Where will you leave your riches?"
Wow.
That sat with me because as we talk about policy and we talk about the importance of connecting what we're doing that impacts the lives of people, how we provide regulation to ensure that people are protected, we want to disconnect our faith. But from my perspective and my personal belief, it's written that these are the things that you need to watch out for. And these are the things that God has called us to pray for and to make sure that are in our line of sight, because oppressive laws will kill people, and they kill people that God loves, which is everybody. And that's our commandment. We sort of talked about this at the beginning. Yeah. This environmental movement is it's a movement of love. That's what we're supposed to be doing. It's about how do we protect and keep what is important to sustaining life but also having life abundantly. So I think it's all connected, and it's important for us to recognize that.
I'm not sure we could get a much better moment to end on. I do need to shout out Nucor, because Nucor is this organization in Philly who really helped. I don't know how to say it yet. I'm too new at this. Bring God back into my life. How's that work?
That works for me.
And
Even though you realize God was never gone from your life.
Yeah,
It's just,
yeah. See, I'm learning. I guess like get the cotton out of my ears. Is that a thing? And I started attending Nucor in the summer of 2020 when this famous local lawyer, Dean Beer, told me about it because I was pretty short on hope and I needed support. And Nucor really brought me that support. And in Philly, there's an organization called Power that is a nexus of clergy who have really significant political power. So, like you said, one side doesn't own Jesus. And I see that play out in Philly in really, really interesting ways.
I think it's important for people to know that you're not excluded from the climate and environmental conversation and fight because of faith. No, this is the moment that we need people of faith to get engaged. And I mean all people of faith. So if you are Christian, if you are Jewish, if you are Islamic, if you are Buddhist, if you have any sense of connection to spirituality or faith, you too are needed. You are not left out on the sideline. Everybody is needed in this moment because we need the solutions and we need the involvement. And most of all, we need the hope. Yes. We've been in the space of thinking that climate change is so devastating. We're all going to hell in a handbasket. We need the leaders of faith and we need people of hope to come in and say, I'm not willing to give up. Yes. I'm not. And so since I'm not willing to give up and I'm not giving up my children and I'm not giving up you or you or you, that means all of us got to figure out how to get in room and decide how do we help create solutions that will get us to the place of being one on this planet and in an environmentally friendly way that sustains us all. We can do that.
Absolutely.
There's room for everybody and we need everybody.
Now. Yeah. We need them now.
Now. Yesterday, we'll take today.
Yes.
We call ourselves reckless optimists or delusional optimists because optimism can be a wily thing to cling on to, but we need to.
We have to. And we have the yin and yang, we have the opposites, and that's what balance is. But we've been out of balance for a while.
Sure have.
So we need the optimism so we can come in and take it up a notch.
I'm feeling as optimistic as I've felt in a long time after hearing Heather. I got to tell you.
Yeah, I'm with you. Can we ask real quick, do you watch The Bear? This has become an accidental theme.
I started watching it. I still haven't gotten through it. In fact, I just binge watched Three Body Problem on Netflix. So that's I watched so many different things, but I've heard so much about the series itself and how it resonates in that way that I can't wait to finish watching.
It's wonderful.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan.
Especially after all the awards.
Oh, yeah. I just made it through the first season, and it's superb. Acting, writing. It's an emotional roller coaster, though, folks. Here to tell you. But it is absolutely worth your time.
Can we sneak in one more question? Sean has a favorite question.
This is my favorite question, and we like to end on this. Do you have a get hyped song, or I like to call it a baseball walk-up song that they might play if you were coming up to the plate, get ready to hit a home run?
Are we going to get it live?
Oh, man.
She's ready.
Okay, so we have the playlist here.
What's the playlist
does it have to be Get Ready?
Okay.
Like literally the name of the playlist.
Yes, there's no wrong answer to this question.
Like it says Get Ready race music. Now I do have a mixture of different genres, so there's a bit of everything in here. Can it be explicit? I don't know.
It sure
of course
can.
it can be explicit. I'm a bit of a hip hop head, honestly.
So yeah, I have really gosh, I got so many. That's why I'm like, which one?
It's a tough call. I
There's
know.
also the Go Kick Ass playlist.
Ooh, I love that one too.
Yeah, that's also a lot of fun. This week has been Fashion Week. Why?
That body banging, what's that? I walk by again, let me look with coolers.
Just sort of like the get hype, get dressed, and go out and just be the best that you can be. So, yeah.
GSD.
Just go and just get it done. I do have to say this, though, too. I'm a huge fan of the new Beyonce album, and that's like on rotation. So, yeah, that too.
If you haven't heard it, folks, go take a listen.
Absolutely.
Well, if I reveal my feelings about it, is that gonna end the podcast on
Absolutely
a bad note?
not. It won't.
I'm
But
not into it.
It's
Like I'm
okay.
trying.
You gotta give it.
I'll give it another go.
I'll give you a couple of songs that I just want you to play on repeat, and I promise you'll get into the spirit of it.
Okay.
It will. It will happen.
I mean, I'm feeling the spirit in this room right now, so maybe today's the day for me to listen to this playlist. Well, Heather, thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
This is such a blast.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Absolute
so much
blast. I just couldn't be more honored to have you on. And you met
Likewise.
Jon Stewart. Like, who haven't you met?
A lot of great people who are listening right now and getting ready to do this work, and they're just so excited about it that I can't wait to meet them too.
Amen.
We'll have to tape another episode. They can all come and
We can have a block party.
yeah, maybe that could be our first live episode.
There we go.
To our listeners, thank you for listening to Cleaning Up Dirty. To help us clean up dirty, follow us at Clean Air Action everywhere on social media and subscribe to our podcast, Cleaning Up Dirty.